Hello, Entrepreneurs Organization. Welcome to EO Alchemy 2024 Brace and Embraced podcast. I'm Jenn Kenning. I'm your host and I'm your co-chair for this event. As you may have gathered from this podcast name, this year's theme is Brace and Embrace. Throughout the 3-day event, we will contemplate an interconnected yet ideological divide world where what is changing at the pace of technology is hard for us to actually fathom and keep up with. As a result, we will consider how to brace for its impact on humanity, brace for the future, brace for change. And through it all, we must embrace who we are as human beings, make time for the introspective, connectivity, and the human dignity. I am pleased to announce that Colorado's Alchemy will feature 13 incredible speakers who will inspire, educate, and make you uncomfortable at times as we navigate the uncharted time we are in our world. Through this podcast series, we will introduce you to some of the great minds that will be speaking at Alchemy 2024 in less than 2 months from now, but only enough to whet your appetite. Let's get started. Today, I am thrilled to be chatting with Rebecca Rosen. Like all of us, Rebecca is an entrepreneur herself. She is also a world-renowned spiritual medium who for more than 2 decades has served as an ambassador between the spirit world and our day-to-day world, relying on wisdom and insight from angels, guides, those who have passed on to people seeking answers in the here and now. Her work empowers people to live with intention by reminding them that we are never alone, that we are all connected to our team spirit, and that we are divinely guided throughout our life journey. She has written 4 international bestsellers, spoken all over the world, and she's one of us. So let's welcome her. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you know what you're getting yourself into.
Well, I don't know if I ever know, but I'm ready and very excited. So thanks for having me.
Well, we're excited to have you today and in a few months from now. So speaking to a large group of entrepreneurs from the US region, this year's theme, as you know, is brace and embrace, 2 concepts you are undoubtedly familiar with. Given your background, what comes to mind when you think about brace and embrace as it relates to our soul's contracts?
So first of all, one of the many gifts of being a spiritual medium is that I have the ability and the luxury of being able to zoom out and see things from a broader non-physical perspective, right? I see it through a different lens. And, soul contracts, we all have them. And there's this quote, we are spiritual beings having a human experience as students in Earth School. Okay. And so these soul contracts are life plans. And I should probably, kind of share a little bit of what that looks like for your audience. But that is basically it's a loose blueprint or a script for your life that you set up before you were born. Okay. So it was designed by us and for us, but not from a mind level. It was from our higher self and with the help of our higher guides and a team spirit that we all have. Okay. And so these soul contracts, they involve very important lessons that we are here to learn and or to teach with each other in relationship. Okay. But, we all have free will choice. So coming into this body, that's one of our gifts. It's a birthright. So what that means is, yeah, you have a loose blueprint or script, but guess what? It's not set in stone. So when people come to me for readings, they're like, tell me my future. I can only give you a probability or a likelihood. Okay. And I can't read your future into being. You have to bring it into being by your free will choices. Okay. So that is very, I think, relieving and empowering because then certain events, yeah, they're likely going to come up for you. And sometimes over and over again until you embrace the lesson. But it's up to you if you allow it in, go with the flow, or you resist it and you deny it. We are really active co-creators with spirit of our life story. Another way you could say it is we're the CEOs of our own life. Okay. And so
Love that.
and so we can view bracing as consciously and deliberately co-creating our future with that team and spirit. And then, we can do it more gracefully by embracing the help and the support that we put into place before we were born. Again, it's that team and spirit, this non-physical energy that's available to us. And that comes through connecting, right? Connecting with our higher selves, connecting with that team. And I guess I'll share just this, but the team, your team spirit, it involves both living and dead people. Okay. So it can be the living, I call it your ground crew. It's your earth angels that show up in your life at just the right time. Sometimes it's, for short, chapters, and sometimes it's your entire lifetime. And then you have your non-physical, like departed loved ones. Sometimes it's animals. We have a lot of, animals that are earth angels at a time. They come in for a period to help you through a difficult chapter in your life, and then they cross over and they pick up where they left off. We have angels, we have spirit guides, we have more enlightened higher beings. Some people are really connected to ascended masters. Okay, so it's all about getting to know who your team spirit is and then giving them permission. Again, we have free will, so we have to invite in that non-physical help. And then when we do, life gets a whole lot more magical and fun and graceful.
Yeah, I love how you say magic and graceful, because I think there's this element of the afterlife, or talking to people that have passed on, or studying, or being inside of grief, that maybe as humans we tend to steer away from, yet it's put in front of us time and time again. We're all going to go through grief at some point in our life, right? That's one thing we can't escape.
Right.
So can you maybe talk about how the audience can maybe get comfortable with the topics that we're going to cover in your session, especially around embracing the afterlife and the people that are showing up?
Yeah, of course. So, in my most recent book that I wrote last year, it's called What's Your Heaven? Okay. And I talk extensively about this, but basically, heaven or hell is not a place. Okay. Rather, it's a state of mind and being, whether you're living or you're dead. So, you have the power and the free will to create your own living hell, or co-create your own idea of heaven on earth and live your best life now. Right. So the key here is that deep down on a soul level, we all know this to be true. Okay. We've done this thousands of lifetimes before, if you believe in reincarnation. Okay. And so what happens though is we have spiritual amnesia. We forget, and intentionally. Okay. Because there's a thing as TMI. You don't always want to remember that your parent was your husband in a past life, right? So we purposely forget. But the idea is it's about re-remembering. It's about awakening. It's about becoming more conscious and remembering that life is not happening to us. We are not victims, right, of our life circumstances. Rather, quite the opposite. Life is happening for us and from us. Okay. It's what we talked about earlier. It's that we all signed up for this. And even the messiest parts, which involve death and grief. And I really believe, in my personal opinion, is that grief is one of the hardest life lessons there is to tackle. But at some point, we all have to go through it. And sometimes it's not just a literal death. Sometimes it's the death of a career, right? Or a breakup with a friendship. Or it's your kids going off, you're an empty nester. There's all sorts of grief that we can experience. And in my experience working with, clients, you see how it's uncomfortable. And so oftentimes we want to bypass those uncomfortable feelings. And so we end up turning to a drug of choice to numb the pain and the discomfort and the grief and sorrow and depression and anxiety and all the things, right? We want to escape. And, what Spirit has taught me is you can run, but you can't hide. We pick up in death where we left off in life. And so the idea is you want to do the work here now and really sink in, lean into those uncomfortable feelings and experiences. And it happens not in our heads, but it's about getting into our bodies and getting into our hearts. Okay. And that's how we connect to our soul and who we really are, rather than the ego. So grief and loss can truly be very humbling because it forces us to surrender. I think a lot of us are so used to being in the driver's seat and feeling like we have control, but honestly, that's quite an illusion. The only control we have is our perspective and our choices and how we wish to view everything, but not really anything external. And so really grief and death, it gives us the opportunity to go deeper, right? And it connects us to a deeper part of ourselves. It connects us to something bigger, and the opportunity to receive the love, support, and care that's available to us from both people in this world, but also these higher beings that we're talking about. And, it really allows us to get out of fear and separation, and it brings us back into a state of love and connection.
I love that because I think so much of grief is this fear rather than the love. Like for me, my motto is grief is love with nowhere to go.
That's
Right?
good.
Right? And it could be, to your point, it's something you're grieving, like that's passing in the human element of life. Right? I think so much of us focus on the death aspect, but it's actually so much of our lives are evolving so fast. That's actually a great segue into kind of responding versus reacting. We both have a favorite quote by Viktor Frankl: between stimulus and response, there's space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and ultimately our freedom. Will you share a little bit about,
I
the
will.
response to life instead of reacting to it? Because so much of our day-to-day experience is reaction.
Absolutely. I mean, this is such a big topic that I recently just co-created a program with my brother, who actually is a Viktor Frankl trained logotherapist. And he created an Enneagram program based on Viktor Frankl's teaching. And that quote is the reason we created this entire course. And the idea here is that, we have the power to choose always. That is our birthright, the law of free will. And what happens is we either choose from the frequency of fear and shadow or from the frequency of love and light. Okay. And so reaction comes from that fear. And that fear is based out of our ego. Wayne Dyer once said, ego is edging God out, EGO, right? Well, that's when we go into the illusion. We're separate, we're disconnected. But when we come back to the truth of that, we're all one, we are all connected. We respond to life, and response comes from that vibration of love. Okay. And that's connected to our higher self, that eternal innate part of us that we all have within us now. And when we leave the body, the body goes, but that soul essence, that light remains. And, so that's really what we want to come back to. So it's knowing, as Viktor Frankl talks about, your why, right? You got to know what's your why. And what my guides and spirit has taught me over the years, it's the same. It's know your what and your why. What do you want? What do you desire? And what's your why? What's your intention behind it? So when you know your why, all the other details like the how, the who, the where, the when, they take care of themselves naturally. And so it's all about coming back into alignment with our soul's purpose and our soul contract, what we were born to do in this lifetime and what we're here to learn and to teach. And so when we consciously show up in our lives every day with an intention to do our best, knowing it doesn't have to be perfect, it never is. We are perfectly imperfect, but we know we're coming from a sincere place, our higher selves, not from our ego, not from that lower self part of us. We naturally align with that frequency of love, and then we naturally respond to life. And I would just say prayer and meditation are really great, easy tools for all of us to use on a daily basis to help us align with that higher self to do this.
So I would say, will you close us out here? Just give people any other things you want to share so that they get a good taste of what you're going to bring to us next month in September. And I want to make sure we save enough for them to be excited.
Yeah,
You've given us so
absolutely.
many good gold nuggets here. What are the kind of key things you want to leave us with that you maybe haven't said yet?
I think what I'm going to talk about is really this Earth School experience, and helping to paint a clear picture for everybody to demystify and destigmatize, death and dying and the afterlife. And I'm going to share a simple 4-step process that will empower people. It gives them tools, really down to earth tools to use to co-create their heaven on earth. My hope is that people will leave inspired, knowing they're not a victim and they get out of any remaining victim consciousness, like life's happening to them, right? Leaves them in a very empowered state, again, that they can be the CEO of their own life and co-create it in a way that feels right and good to them. And then what most importantly, and I'll segue into this, but I'm going to use the majority of my time to do audience readings. And it's really fascinating because I always say the work speaks for itself. If you give me enough time to show you what this looks like by demonstrating and channeling, I can give you concrete evidence that it's undeniable. And that helps build authentic faith and trust. You're like, there's no way she could have known that. And then you start to then open your mind and heart to the possibility, wow, I'm really not alone. And that you too can access this on your own. And so as this whole time we've been talking, I keep wanting to ask you, does Somewhere Over the Rainbow mean anything? That song, and then there's a grandmother that's very strong with you, but then there's a great grandmother. So I see two of them, and I want to say it's off the maternal side. So did you know your grandmother and or great grandmother off that side?
Yeah, my grandmother was my most closest person to me in my life.
She's one of your guides.
Oh, for sure. She passed.
Yep, she's standing there right now with her magic wand.
And our sign is rainbows.
Rainbows. That's it.
She sends me rainbows when I need one.
That's it.
And so you would not know that. There's no way you would know that.
No. So if I see Somewhere Over the Rainbow and I'm seeing The Wizard of Oz, they're trying to get us to, it's like playing the game of charades. Right?
Her name was Dorothy.
Oh my God, Dorothy, the Wizard of Oz. There you go. So they're like, how do we get Rebecca to say rainbows? How do we get her to say Dorothy? I never know what I'm talking about. I just know my language. It's a sign language with spirit. But the point is, that's what we're going to do. And then we go deeper in how proud she is of you and that you have stepped out and up into the spotlight. Basically, what I'm seeing is her as your guide, as a silent partner, helping you to reach more people on a deeper soul level. And it's kind of like what I do. I normalize the paranormal. You are here to bring a deeper sense of purpose and connection and spirituality into a very corporate world to help people get to their why, right? To be driven by their soul, not their earthly agenda or ego or motivations, right? Because if you were telling me you work with money, money's just energy.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so you get to raise the level of consciousness around, we are just exchanging energy on different levels. And she's so proud of you. And she's with someone named, it's a J name, male. I don't know if it's her husband, Joe or John or Jack.
Well, we all have J names. So, and that is probably a good segue of closing us out. So if you don't believe, hopefully you do now. Most of you know that my commitment to the world is that it works for 8 billion people and the planet, and that we do that through the exchange of money. So if you weren't a believer before this podcast, you might be at the end. Rebecca, we're thrilled to have you as one of our prime keynotes on Thursday, September 26th. Thank you so much for your spirit, for who you are in the world. And we're looking forward to being able to dive in further with you at Alchemy 2024. Thanks everyone for listening. Grace and embrace, and we'll see you next month.